Hey, yo, what's going on? I'm Josh Martinez from iHeartRadio's newest wrestling podcast, the Superstar Crossover, and Z100, New York's #1 hit music station, with my guest, Adam Cole.
Baby. There it is.
There you go.
There it is.
I didn't know if I should add it in, you add it in. I don't know how to be.
I think that's the beautiful thing. It could be me, it could be you, but nonetheless, you do have to finish with Baby, I think. I think it's bad luck if you don't.
You know, it's funny because, and you're a diehard wrestling fan. You were a wrestling fan growing up. I was. We're about a year apart.
Oh, cool.
And as a wrestling fan growing up, Attitude Era was really the more the time that we really kind of gravitated to things more, right? The way wrestling kind of embedded my brain as a child, where like things just become normal to me. Where like you say things and people don't understand. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, for sure. Even the way that I looked, excuse me, sorry, the way that I looked at the world as a kid when I first got really obsessed with wrestling. Like, an example, like I'd be walking around the grocery store and I'd hear a song playing, and like in my head, there's this music video of this like wrestling angle going on, or a cool song would play, and all of a sudden I noticed that when I was 10 years old, I noticed my walk was a little different because I would like imagine walking down to the ring. Yeah, your entire perspective on everything gets engulfed with anything and everything pro wrestling.
It's funny you say that because I have a certain playlist through iHeartRadio where when I'm in a rush, I actually put on certain on that playlist.
Let's go, baby.
All about that boom. There's just a sped up thing to me when I hear it. How important is entrance music to a wrestler's character?
Oh my God. Entrance music is huge. So again, to kind of backpedal a little bit, I remember when I first fell in love with wrestling, it wasn't the promos, it wasn't the matches, it was the entrances. That was like, seriously, when I was 9 years old, that was all I cared about. Stone Cold Steve Austin was my favorite wrestler because his song was cool and the people went crazy when the glass broke. And that was it. And then obviously as time went on, I started to fall in love with everything that involves wrestling. Obviously the matches, the psychology, the promos, the storylines, the fan interaction, all that stuff. But the first thing that I fell in love with as a wrestling fan was wrestlers' entrances. So again, for someone like me, I think entrance music is incredibly important. Not only number one, because it sets the tone of the vibe of that character. If you're a cocky, arrogant jerk, there's a certain swagger that you have to have, and there's a certain song that I feel that you have to have. If you're this super energetic, exciting, ready to rock and roll babyface, you have to have that type of music that plays along with it as well. So for me, the beautiful thing about All About the Boom is, first of all, massive shout out to Mikey Ruckus, who made that song in a day, which is
insane.
So absolutely insane. And secondly, it's just, I don't know. I really think, I've been wrestling for 15 years, and I feel like this song captures the essence of Adam Cole better than any song that I've ever had. It's incredibly interactive. There's time to get the boom in there. There's time for the Adam Cole baby. There's stuff where the crowd can sing along. It fits so well to my character and what I bring to the table. So yeah, wrestling music, incredibly important.
Did you feel any pressure prior to hearing the song, because the song that was used in NXT was big amongst wrestling fans? It was it was, the boom was there. It was very interactive. I remember seeing you at NXT takeovers and being in the crowd and doing everything. And I wasn't the only one. Clearly, Sold Out Arenas did it too. Were you worried that the song wouldn't replicate what you were trying to do coming into AEW?
1,000%. Yeah. I remember, because again, like you said, people really loved the Undisputed Era theme. They really enjoyed it. And it was, I loved the theme too. It was absolutely one of my favorites. So, and this happens anytime. So I've had multiple entrance themes throughout the years. And every time you first change your song, you do second guess yourself a lot. You're like I can't tell you how many times I would listen to the song that Mikey Ruckus created and be like, okay, I really like it, but will other people like it? Is this good? How am I going to walk? Does the walk feel the same? Like, I just listened to it dozens and dozens of times, and then just hoping that people You'll find that same excitement and that same thrill at your previous entrance music that people also really enjoyed. So, but again, I think I believe this too. I really, really do. I think part of wrestling music being so important, or why people like it so much, is crowd response. Like, and I know the song itself is really important, but like, you subconsciously can't help but go to a place mentally where you're excited, you have adrenaline going through your body, and you're happy when you put said song mixed with 15, 20,000 people going crazy. So fortunately, when I debuted, the crowd was amazing, and they were wild, and they were having a great time. So from the gate, not only is the song awesome, but then again, people remember that moment of the crowd being super, super amped up. So I think that plays a part as well. But yes, to answer, to long-winded answer, but to answer your question, yes, I was nervous, but I knew eventually people were going to fall in love with it, and they did very quickly.
What was the biggest difference in regards to nerves for you, if any? Maybe it was the exact same nerves. Debuting at NXT TakeOver, attacking Drew McIntyre from behind with what eventually would become the Undisputed Era in the corner, and you just walking out at the end of a main event. You know, similar situation, different approach. But what would you say was the biggest differences from you getting ready to go into the ring standpoint?
Ooh, God. So both were very nerve-wracking situations for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest difference is when I debuted at NXT, I mean, I knew a handful of people there, but I was going to work with a bunch of people who I didn't know. So automatically there's a little bit more nerves and tension there, because you're curious how you're going to interact with everybody. I was so curious about how the process worked at NXT. Whereas with AEW, same thing. I wasn't exactly sure how the process worked, but I knew and know everybody long before I made my debut at AEW. I mean, I got the chance to meet some of the newer guys, but a bunch of guys, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, all these guys who I consider very, very close personal friends. So the nerves at AEW were more internalized about me, myself, wanting the audience to be excited that I was there. But it's actually crazy how similar these situations were, because I remember debuting at NXT TakeOver and attacking Drew McIntyre. And I remember this moment for 5 minutes before I ran out there. And I'm like, God, I hope that the people know who I am, and I hope they're excited. And that's the battle that goes on in your head the whole time. And then fortunately, they responded very positively. But then same thing, or in a similar situation to AEW, I knew everyone was expecting Bryan Danielson. That was like the big rumor. So I'm like, I hope that they're like, oh, cool, we got Adam Cole, and not like, shoot, where's Bryan Danielson? So very similar, but also very, very different, I think, at the same time. But I am incredibly nervous every time I go out there to do anything.
Well, listen, if you're nervous, that means you're still passionate about it and you still care about it, right?
Yep.
So that's a good problem to have.
Yes, I agree.
This Wednesday, AEW Dynamite. It is the Blind Eliminator Tag Tournament. You with AEW Heavyweight Champion MJF. Did you ever come across MJF prior to coming to AEW?
I did. I actually met MJF when he was very, very early on in his career. And from the moment I saw him, and I mean this, this is regardless what I think about him personally, but from the moment I saw him, I knew he was super talented. He was one of those guys who got it very, very early on. He was someone who put just as much time and energy into his promo work as he did as his bell-to-bell in-ring competition work. So yeah, he was incredibly talented from a very young age. He was definitely one of those guys that when I saw, I was like, oh, this is going to be a guy I'm going to be seeing a lot more of.
Now, he invaded your game streaming event the other night.
I don't know why I picked up. I don't know. It was so silly. I don't even know why I picked up.
You know what? Because you're a good guy. Good guys pick up the phone.
Thank you. You're right. Thank you.
Bad people hit ignore, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, fan. Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
So, how excited are you for the next few years within AEW?
Oh my God.
With the evolution of wrestling as a whole, the growth of AEW, and you're part of it because you're a huge part of AEW's success moving forward.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm incredibly excited. AEW, again, I know that people don't necessarily forget, but it's a good reminder that AEW is such a young company. Like it's unbelievable the progress that we've made in such a short amount of time. I've only been here, for like almost 2 years. So I'm still super, super early in my AEW career. On top of that, I was out for 9 months with that injury, which was the longest I had ever been out in my 15-month or 15-year career. So seeing the development and the growth of AEW has been so exciting. Again, not only with the idea of us traveling all across the United States and having really, really riled up, excited wrestling fans, but doing this tour of Canada right now where the fans are just as passionate. My God, at the end of August, we are doing Wembley freaking Stadium. We've already sold 65,000 plus tickets, and there's not a single card or not a single match, not a single talent has been announced for the show. So if that doesn't show the excitement that AEW has globally, I don't know what does. But going forward and looking at the path that AEW is on, I think it's nowhere but up. I think a lot of our fans feel the exact same way. It's an exciting time, not just for AEW, but pro wrestling as a whole. Everyone is firing on all cylinders right now. And the better that AEW does, the better that WWE does, the better that Ring of Honor does, Impact, New Japan. Like, I want everyone to do well. And right now, AEW is doing really well. So it's an exciting time, man. I love pro wrestling, and I want everyone to kill it.
Now, you mentioned a few different companies, and when you think of AEW, there are certain 4 or 5 performers you think of, male and female. Same thing with WWE, Impact, New Japan. Who would you say is the most underrated performer today?
Ooh, Jay Lethal.
Wow. Okay.
Without question. Yeah.
Interesting.
Jay and when I say underrated, I know Jay works for AEW. So a lot of people could say he's not necessarily underrated. He's on television every week. He does amazing things, but sometimes I don't think people realize how much of a complete package that Jay Lethal is. Like, he is bell to bell, easily top 3 I've ever been in the ring with, as far as a guy who can do anything and everything. He's an amazing babyface. He's an amazing heel. He's amazing on the microphone. You could throw him in a tag team match. You could throw him in a 45-minute singles match. He could open the show. He could be in the middle of the card. He could main event, and all of it fits. Jay is one of those guys who you can absolutely always 24/7 depend on. He is one of the best pro wrestlers I've ever had the pleasure of sharing the ring with. And I feel like not enough people talk about how he's one of the best of our generation. I think Jay Lethal is unbelievable.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because like I know that maybe I take him for granted, right? It's one of those situations that you just know how good someone is. Yep. Almost like a Dolph Ziggler is a great example on the WWE side, right? Like, you just take for granted how good they really are.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. Growing up, I had my favorite match of all time, right?
Yes.
It was Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, WrestleMania 6, changed my life. Yeah, baby.
Yep.
Changed my life. WrestleMania 6, Toronto Skydome, 67,678. These are things I remembered from like
of course
4 years old.
Never forget, man.
Don't know what I had for dinner Saturday, but I remember those numbers.
Right.
As I got older and I started listening to podcasts and I started looking at wrestling a little differently and picking up on little nuances because of interviews like this, where you mention little things here and there, I have a new favorite match. So I want to know, what was your favorite match growing up, and what is your favorite match of all time now that you're not part of, that you just can sit back and enjoy?
Oh, great question. So I think my first favorite match ever was The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 17 in the Houston Astrodome. At that point, that was the biggest wrestling event I had ever seen. I started watching wrestling in 1999. I was 9 years old. I started a little bit late. But I remember 2 years later, that match happening. And between the Limp Bizkit My Way video, the match last minute getting added to a no disqualification stipulation, JR on commentary going, no disqualification, when was that added? There's a second pause where no one is making noise. Then Austin's glass breaks and 67,000. I get chills talking about it still. 67,000 people stand up and scream at the top of their lungs. In that moment, it was the first time I ever got goosebumps. And in that moment, I said, oh, I need to be a wrestler. I don't want to just be a fan. Like, I want to someday maybe feel I couldn't imagine how that felt for Stone Cold. And that summer vacation, I watched that VHS tape every day for 3 months, every single day, like, because that was the only tape that I really had, and I would watch it every day. So that one for me was huge. And then now, as time has gone on, God, I go back and forth between these two, but I think Shawn Michaels is the greatest professional wrestler that's ever lived. He's a hero of mine. He was a mentor of mine. I love him dearly, and he's on another level. So I think it's either Shawn versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25, based on the entire history and story behind everything. But then also, God, Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle was really, really special at WrestleMania 21 as well. But if I had to pick right now, I'm going Shawn versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25, with a close second being Shawn and Kurt Angle at 21.
Coincidentally enough, mine was WrestleMania 25 as well.
There we go.
I remember watching it. I remember where I watched it with my buddies, and we were just literally jumping out of our seats for the near falls. And that was really the first time I remember near falls meaning something in a match that I picked up on, right?
Dude, I'm so glad you said that, because I remember we had a WrestleMania party, and at this point I was wrestling, or I just started very recently. I'd been in for like a year, and I remember we had a bunch of people over, and I'd say 75% of the people there didn't watch wrestling, but they wanted to check out this WrestleMania. And while this match is happening, and like you said, same with you, we were screaming and yelling, and I would turn and look at these people who had never watched wrestling before, and their jaws were on the floor. So anytime you can get a non-wrestling fan who has not watched it before, one of my buddies is now still a wrestling fan because of that match. So it was a special moment in time. I can't imagine what it was like in the arena.
So, and then as I listened to podcasts, my new favorite was actually Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Bad Blood, the Hell in a Cell in 1997, because of the nuances, the storyline leading into it. Shawn Michaels, it was essentially like a squash match in theory, but it worked. Right. You know, Shawn Michaels cut him off quickly using heel tactics, and then got cut off again. And then the Kane debut, and all these, just, to me, it was like the complete match of how things can go when you tell the right story. And again, I know nothing about wrestling when I'm, compared to you, but just as a fan.
But yeah, you can explain how it makes you feel, and you can explain why it was so important to you. And on top of that, that's such a great choice, because a match like that had never taken place before. Like, that was like, they had a fresh blueprint that to this day, a lot of those Hell in a Cell matches are based off of Shawn versus The Undertaker at Bad Blood. So yeah, very important match and a great choice.
Now, you mentioned how things make you feel. How did you feel when you were crowned the first ever Owen Hart Cup champion?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, with your girl, Dr. Baker, DMD, by the way.
That whole night was just so unbelievable for so many different reasons. Again, Owen Hart influenced so many wrestlers, and still does. And the one thing you always hear about Owen is how great of a guy he was, on top of being just an unbelievable performer. So to be in that first tournament and to win it alongside my girlfriend, Britt Baker, and to have Martha there, and like the championships and the trophy, and just being able to really showcase and appreciate how important Owen Hart is, which, again, I know us fans and us wrestlers will never forget him, but the chance to celebrate him in that way was really, really cool. And to be a big part of it was unbelievable. I'll never forget it.
You were also a big part of Ring of Honor back in the day. Looking back in hindsight, do you understand the magnitude and the importance of Ring of Honor and the evolution of wrestling to this day?
Oh my God, yeah. To me, I think Ring of Honor may be the most important company that has helped evolve what modern pro wrestling is today. Seriously. Like there are, when you look at all the talent that came from Ring of Honor, Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, the Briscoes, AJ Styles, the Young Bucks. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of these guys who have come through Ring of Honor in some capacity. And also the style of wrestling that kind of started to transcend and move forward a little bit into the casual wrestling audience, and what they liked in wrestling matches was huge. Again, these were guys who not all of us are 6'4", 265 pounds. A lot of us had this certain style of pro wrestling that we really wanted to showcase. And the athleticism was huge. The hard-hitting style was huge. The crazy, passionate fan base was really important. So to this day, you know, I spent 7 years in Ring of Honor, and my first wrestling contract ever was with ROH. So there is no doubt in my mind I would have not gone to NXT. I would have not gone to New Japan Pro Wrestling. I might not be in AEW if it wasn't for my time in ROH. And that's just for me personally. And I think a bunch of guys can say the same thing. So ROH, incredibly important in the modern era of wrestling that we're in. And the history is incredibly important.
Now, you mentioned fans, how passionate they are. PWG fans have always been passionate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm biased as hell, born and raised in New York City. I think that we have the greatest fans on the planet. And since I am based in New York City, what's your favorite memory of New York City in your career?
My favorite memory is my favorite match that I was involved in that took place in New York. Yeah, because I get asked this question a lot. So New York City is incredibly important to me because in 2012, me versus Kyle O'Reilly took place at a Ring of Honor pay-per-view, Best in the World 2012. And it was in the Hammerstein Ballroom, which was super exciting. And me and Kyle were in this feud with each other. And we had to have this match called a hybrid fighting rules match, which was a very confusing and convoluted match type that a lot of the fans weren't thrilled about. And at this point, me and Kyle were still very, very early in our wrestling careers. So we had, I don't want to say that we had, I feel like we had the respect of the fans where they would pay attention to what we were doing, but we weren't over yet by any means. Like people weren't lining up to buy the shirts. People weren't screaming when our music hit. We were still kind of earning their respect. I'll put it to you that way. And when this match was happening, the crowd was not into it at all in the beginning. It was like, they were trying to be respectful, but they were bored. They just weren't. This is one of those matches where you had to be careful of like how many punches you threw, rope breaks. It was super convoluted. Long story short, at one point, Kyle punched me in the mouth and it split my lip where I could have taken my lip and done this. Like it was completely split in half. So much blood. I looked like a zombie. And that changed the entire dynamic of the match. All of a sudden, those New York City fans, those rabid New York fans were completely invested in this match. Everyone was standing on their feet. They're banging on the barricades. They're chanting, "This is awesome." They're chanting Adam Cole. And at one point I'm on my knees and I flipped my hair up and I yelled to fire up to Kyle, and blood is squirting out on his chest. And Kyle's standing there. So the cool thing about it is, again, we're pretty young in our career and we really changed a lot of what we were going to do and the dynamic of that match based on this little speed bump that we had, which actually made the match so much better. So from that point forward, me and Kyle O'Reilly's Ring of Honor careers really started to skyrocket. The next week, I won the ROH television title. And I just had a different connection with the fans, and so did Kyle. So that match is the most important match to me in my career. And one of the important reasons is, again, those rabid New York City fans that just were having the time of their life.
I want to quickly change gears a little bit before we wrap this up. I want to do a quick game of this or that. I'll give you two options. You got to pick one or the other. You don't even have to explain yourself.
Okay.
All right. Hot dogs or hamburgers?
Hamburgers.
Eggs or pancakes?
Eggs.
Pools or beaches?
Pools.
Barbecue or fried food?
Ooh, barbecue.
Xavier Woods or Tyler Breeze?
Oh, Xavier Woods. That's a tough one, though. That's a tough one.
N64 or PlayStation?
Oh, I'm going original PlayStation.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Xbox.
What video game changed your life as a kid?
As a kid, Final Fantasy VII on the original PlayStation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is called the Superstar Crossover. So my previous guest had a question for you. It was WWE superstar Zelina Vega.
Beautiful.
I would want to know what their favorite anime is and why is it Naruto?
But if that's not your answer, what is your favorite anime of all time?
I am going to give the most disappointing answer because people assume, I think, that I'm really into anime because I'm really into video games, but I'm being totally transparent, totally honest. I actually don't watch any animes. I've thought over and over again and been told over and over again that I need to get into it and I would really enjoy it, but I can't give an answer because I have not watched. Wait, with the original. This is going to make me seem so silly, probably. Would the original Pokemon count as an anime?
Here's the thing. I've never watched Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or any sort of anime. So for the sake of this, I'll say yes, and then let people on social media just rag on me.
Okay, yeah. If you attack me, I'm very, very sorry. But I'll go the original Pokemon to give an answer. I used to watch that every day before school.
My next guest is WWE superstar Xavier Woods.
Oh.
So what question would you have for our next guest?
Oh, okay. Who is your favorite member of the party and why is it Chugs? I'm going off the same similar concept as Zelina, but I'm excited to hear this answer.
I love it. I love it. One more time, AEW Dynamite this Wednesday. And before we wrap this up, favorite aspect of AEW Fight Forever, which is now available.
Oh, I love the accessibility. And what I mean by this is the game is so fun to play, but not only that, it's easy to learn. So me and Britt were playing Fight Forever, and she doesn't really play many video games at all. And within 30 seconds, she figured out how to play. So I love the idea of it being a game that, again, that is very, very easy to learn, but there is so much detail within the game that like two elite level players, no pun intended, going against each other could make for some really awesome, intricate, competitive matches. But I love how accessible the game is.
I will tell you, one of the coolest aspects for me is that Orange Cassidy puts his fucking hands in his pockets and still has a moveset.
Unbelievable. That's a real AEW video game, baby. That's right.
It really is. Who, aside from you and Britt, who's your favorite wrestler to play with?
Ooh, Owen Hart.
Oh, okay. Which, by the way, I haven't played with him yet, although I read somewhere that he's probably the most complete wrestler in the game in regards to kind of like move sets and how effective it could be and the impact and stuff like that. So
just wait and see, man. It's amazing. Owen is similar to the Owen Hart tournament that we do. Owen is showcased and respected and appreciated very, very well in Fight Forever. It's awesome.
I love that. One more time, Adam Cole, I appreciate you coming by, man. Thank you so much.
Of course, man. Thank you.